second thing, this is something that's interesting. This is actually adding the next dimension to our analytics data. So far, there's been a lot of talking about when we look at our analytics, we can see the what people are doing, we cannot see the why. So some of the interesting stuff going on, and this is actually from the usability part of the spectrum. Right now they're doing online, they're doing usability tests where they measure the emotional response to the pages. And basically right now it takes some software they have started doing, like you have, it's called, so like you can read body language, right? So they have the same thing in relation to start measuring and reading mouth language. So are you frustrated? Are you angry? What's happening in relation to this? So you can actually go in and get an extra dimension to your data. So you can actually go in and split it up saying, okay, what are the angry users doing? What are the frustrated users doing? How are they tackling things? And getting that extra dimension into our data. Because what we see is the need to actually segment much further. What we do today is really crude work in relation to the challenges and the quality of the data that is underlining it. Cool. And simplification. This is probably one of the best dashboards we made. If anybody isn't impressed, yeah, I can understand it. But in reality, this is a dashboard for a client, and they needed to know what market they needed to focus on in relation to all these numbers. So this was the first dashboard they came into and the first thing they saw. And what market did they need to focus on first? The American one, right? Actually, if this was a Chinese dashboard, it would have been the opposite, but that's another story. But they needed to focus on the American market, and all the other stuff was fine. Forget all the other numbers. That's kind of the challenge that I see today with analytics, that we have too many numbers, so we do not focus on where the value is. We go broad and we think of looking at numbers and have dashboards with massive amount of numbers, but at the end of the day, sometimes simplicity and having the focus in relation to pushing things forward is where the value is. Next level, campaign analytics. So these are things that are all available here and now, things that we can do. So but when people go out and do campaign analytics, normally what we have is we run a campaign and we look at conversion rate. But in reality, the campaign is a much more complex factor size than this, can be broken down into many more factors that are all different in relation to where things should be going. Right? So when we run an AdWords campaign, for instance, and we do, you have an ad for Nike shoes and you have a conversion on that, we assume that the conversion is actually somebody buying Nike shoes. Right? That's what AdWords tells us in the conversion. But in reality, there is no guarantee that the product in the ad is the same thing that was converted to. I could click on Nike shoes and I could go in and buy shoelaces, and it would still say I had a conversion on the ad. Right? So taking this campaign thing to the next level and actually drilling down is something where there's immense value, because we're actually working on a very crude level. So all this stuff is now, right? All this stuff is things that are available and that we could be pushing, but we're not necessarily pushing. So how restrained have I made you feel now?
We okay? Yes.
Yes.
Good.
Now, like I said, my talk, from where I come from, is a horrible commercial place. Right? I take for granted, and I need to know that the data is in order, but a lot of the finer aspects of data collection and whether I use one script or the other, it takes second place to the business objective. And it takes second place to creating value with these numbers. So it's just where I come from and why I'm annoying, most likely. Now, before we showed the thing about the timeline, about acting on the data and the latency of the various stuff, But where we see part of the future is really a huge part in relation to predictions and being able to think before things happen. And why is that important in relation to that? It's important because it actually extends the timeline backwards, right? So we can do the analysis. If we can predict what's going to happen, we can actually do the analysis and the decision on what is supposed to happen even before it happens. And that means that our actions move up on the value scale because we already know what's going to happen. And this isn't something that is crazily far-fetched. We are delighted to have Mark Edmondson on our team, and part of the things that he is combining is building some of these stuff into various stuff. And in reality, we build a prediction engine. So right now, and people who were at Super Week, and thank you for that, helped us win the Golden Punch Card Award for a prediction engine that predicts what?
You're welcome. Sorry.
Yeah, you didn't vote for us, I know. So the prediction engine actually is something that we wanted to do something that could go in and say, can we take machine learning and apply it to analytics data so it has a value? Not something big and far-fetched process, but actually going in and saying, okay, we're doing machine learning, we're combining it with analytics data. And what we can do now is we can go and we can predict the next page people are going to see on the website. And it sounds like a basic problem or nice to know thing, but in reality, because most browsers, at least on the website or on the physical side, has prefetching built in, we can actually, with a 40% higher precision now, 70% higher precision now, go and predict the next page people are going to see, which means that we can preload it, which means that the load time of the website in general goes down. This is using machine learning in an active way, right? And it means that actually when the engine is running, all the data, we have this lovely model, right? Sending data from Google Analytics or Adobe Analytics, sending it into BigQuery, doing TensorFlow, doing a lot of cloud stuff, and then sending it out back to the user within 2 seconds. So we can actually get the response from what happens on the site and getting it back to the users after we've done calculations in 2 seconds. And this is good value. So what we see on this, and this is just to show an example tying it back to the business thing. So when the sites that runs it now, they have seen an increase in customer experience. They've seen improved conversion rate. They've seen reduction in exits because we actually had to coin a new term for this. So we called it the moment of doubt. So when you're sitting at a website, and you can ponder it the next time you're sitting on a website, and you click on a link, and the time it takes before the next page comes, that's the moment when you're sitting thinking, maybe I should do the laundry, or oh, I have to call that guy about something. And you might disrupt your own process. And if you guys do it as professionals, the regular guys are going to do it as well. So the interesting thing here is this is actually, because it's been standardized, right? It's something that is installed through a tag management system and runs on BigQuery. So in reality, it can run on most sites without any additional work done on the site. So this is, from my aspect, this is one of the things that I see as part of the future of analytics. This is actually us being in a place where we design things so the data can act on its own, right? So we remove the human from the equation. One of my favorite analogies is saying, so I will give you two options. Either I will give you a Tesla with a lovely machine learning engine driving the car so it can auto drive, or I will give you a Tesla without the machine learning engine, but with a web analyst under the hood to make sure that you're self-driving. Everybody will say yes to the Tesla no matter what, but most prefer the model with the machine learning algorithm, right? Because we know the time it takes for us to crunch data. How much data does a self-driving car gather every every second.
Second?
Yeah. 2 gigabytes. 2 gigabytes of data is what a self-driving car gathers every second, and it has to crunch that and make a decision whether to brake or speed up or what to do. Right? Anybody's in here for the self-driving test? You will sit and I will give you 2 gigabytes of data every second, and you just have to act on it. Anybody? No, not really, right? And this is the power and the reason why this has become interesting. Because the cost of machine learning and the cost of the storage and BigQuery and all this has become much more accessible for everybody. It's much easier to get started with, even though getting there is damn complicated. So it took us close to a year to build this intelligent prefetching engine. But now we have it, we can start and look at other stuff. So this is a Kmean cluster, but it's actually a Kmean cluster based on trying to build data-based personas. So instead of going in and doing personas based on what we think and say, yeah, we have Bob and he likes to shop and he has a dog, it actually goes in and extract and look at the data and the pattern of users on your website to build these personas, right? So it will cluster and say you have seven types of people using the website, and they have these characteristics. So instead of going out and trying to build something ourselves that we translate, this is taking the data the other way around and saying, these are the people we have right now. This is what we can do with that. For us, the prediction engine also means this. This is something that is really interesting, because going in and actually being able to based on how a user clicks, the first 7 clicks, we can start determining what is the likelihood that you're going to convert. Right? This is massively interesting because it actually means that we can start saying, okay, these guys, they are 99% likely to convert. Let's not spend money marketing to them because they're already converting. These guys down here, they're never going to convert. Let's not waste money marketing to them. Let's focus on these 2 groups that we can actually move. Right? So instead of trying to serve all people the same way, we actually can go in and serve people based on who they are and where they are in relation to our business. And that makes it interesting, and it makes it interesting because it gives us opportunities to work with purchase patterns. Saying this is an example from a travel site, right? So that actually the purchase pattern changes based on the distance from the destination. So if I'm in Denmark and I want to go to Portugal, I have a different purchase pattern than a person who wants to go to Hamburg. Because this is the data speaking instead of what we expect, right? And once we have these mapped, it actually means a really important thing. This is not really a workshop, is it?
Close enough.
Yeah, okay. So it's I'm doing the work and you shop. But one of the important things we can do when we have this in place is we can actually break this. Because this is, from our point of view, one of the basic problems of what we're doing. We have this great thing saying, yeah, we do A/B testing, and then we can carry on, and we will have the users most likely to buy at the end. But in reality, this is a flawed model. Because if we have the opportunity to converse with people on their own terms, so if you do an A/B test, and you have 60% who prefer A and 40% who prefer B. In reality, it doesn't mean that we should run A for everybody. It means that we should run A for the people who prefer A and B for the people who prefer B. And that would actually mean that we're able to do a conversation that goes on a one-to-one basis. And then we get this. This is much more interesting in the sense that we are actually able to carry everybody through to the conversion, right? Because we are not having one website that we're trying to optimize to the best average. we're having one website that we're optimizing to the user groups that we're working with. So reversing that process also means that we can do something like this, so we can actually go in and determine where people are in their purchase process. You can go and map and say, this again is an example saying, if I want to go somewhere, if I visit a travel website, I will, on a certain amount of basis, I will visit that site after I bought my ticket. At that point, should you try to sell me another ticket? It doesn't really work, right? And so being able to match your communication to where I am in the purchase process is actually something that can be done with data. This is something that is either accessible now or is really close. And this is where we stop the talk about the data and start talking about the value. Because if this is what we bring to the table to the organization we work with or work for, this will make us rock stars, right? This is something the organization can understand because it's tangible outcomes that actually is related to the business. Much more than just talk about numbers or data quality or bounce rates, right? This is trying to meet the business as it is. Before the last sprint around the curve, I want to interrupt myself. It's hard. I like my own voice. So please interrupt. From where you're sitting in your respective organizations, where does this not match the future? Can you see a value in relation? Because I'm commercial blind, right? I have this focus on the sale and getting the value and everything. And I know there's an underlying thing about data quality that has to be in order, because if the data quality isn't in order, none of this is possible, right? Then we will be making really bad decisions moving forward. Yeah.
I think there's a huge aspect to the maturity of clients, as the level that many of the clients I see today is not up to date in terms of really trusting what a decent data setup can do for your company and understand the ROI in terms of knowing your customers better through data. So what is there's a lot of fancy stuff you can do, but the clients also need to be convinced that this is the future and also have a budget to apply these things.
But I think the story actually goes back to saying, because we're talking about you should have data. And if you go out, the story is data is the new oil. And all this fancy thing about how important data is. The challenge is that data without any action tied to it doesn't really have any value. If I could give you a complete data set of what happened in 1912, could you get some immense value out of it?
I think not.
Not commercial.
Yeah.
I totally agree. I mean, first of all, that companies that I talk to at least, and possibly with the big in-house teams doing very advanced things, the ones with consultancies are often still feel quite immature in general and not using the data as they should be. And their biggest problem often is we don't trust the data quality is bad, do a basic setup for us. I totally get what you're saying, though, the fact that we need to change the discussion from being how to get the right data to how to actually use the data, focus on the actions.
Yeah.
My fear, and seeing this probably more from the vendors at times, is pushing of the big solutions, the big projects, or the big tools that cost a lot of money to do, promise big results, which may not work out, as opposed to pushing the solutions, which will add a lot of value, be done quicker for less money, definitely less sexy, but fixing site search, fixing site speed type things, which have a big impact and could actually be a small way to sort of start off using data, getting through step by step to the point that they're mature enough with enough investment in the teams and the resources to do the bigger projects. It might be people are focused much on the big projects at the far end of the scale, rather than the more fundamental things first. Regardless of data quality, you need that for both of them.
Yeah. But isn't this much a problem for us in the sense that I'm going to be crude, that we're talking to the wrong people. And we're talking to some people who basically, and this is just a consideration, right? That in reality, what we're talking about is we are talking about changing the bottom line of the business.
Yeah.
But very often we're entering to marketing who do not have the relationship to the bottom line of the business. And if the CMO goes to the CEO saying, "Hey, boss, I want to do this project because it will impact the bottom line."
Yep, agreed.
He doesn't have the mandate.
And the counter challenge. Sorry.
Please go.
The counter challenge then is the fact that the fundamentals needed to fix the basics first, to then do then do some of the basic things first, and then do the sexy things.
Yeah.
Are too detailed, too granular to appeal to the CMOs, the CEO.
Yeah.
So you've got to, what you need them to do first, they won't buy. But people who would buy what you need them to do first haven't got the budgets or the influence from the top down possible things. I think there's a bit of a catch-22 situation there. Sorry.
Yeah, but it's, if you think about it, what Sting is proposing already actually exists, but not in the area that he's saying. For example, we have dynamic ads, right? Dynamic ads are exactly that. They match the behavior, the previous behavior of the user, and delivers a content in the ad that is matches to what he or she has seen, right? And this is a bit more predictive, but it still is a dynamic content or a dynamic call to action in the website is already. Dynamic ads have been implemented. They have not dominated the market, and there are a lot of clients that, or a lot of companies that do not have the data in quality enough to build it, but some people will, and it takes time. If a few companies start doing that, and that becomes, well, yes, a buzzword in the market, we'll have this migration, and there will be, and like it's Dilbert Comics and the CEOs and the etc. C-levels will hear these buzzwords and come after them. So this is possible. There is an evolution of the system here.
But we're still waiting. Yeah.
My story is basically saying, yes, it is already possible, but are we focusing there?
No, we're not. Just saying.
It's not where we're working, right? We're working, so we have this opportunity to actually have an impact on the business, but we're too busy in the engine room making this start block shine.
We still should go also for the low-hanging fruit because it's there.
And that's business value as well. So the challenge there is that's where you have to business value first. I mean, those are the biggest solutions. They're longer-term solutions, very expensive. And trying to tell a CEO to spend $100 grand on these projects, which will deliver £1 million, $1 million, whatever, in a year's time, compared to spending that money on paid search right here, right now to get money back immediately. It's immediate results versus the long-term results. That's the challenge I'm finding discussing it.
But imagine how awesome it would be the data to take to CEO. Very quick. It's very simple. We have, let's say, we have inspired by him travel sites, and travel site has two options: book now or program your trip. For the closest trips, probably the book now is more used than program and build a schedule for your trip option. But if it's farther, there are more people building the programming because it's normally they research with a long time, with a longer window for that. So if you have a result that's if you do an A/B test, the direct result of the A/B test is that call to action book now is it's more profitable.
Yeah.
But if you have a percentage of people of a specific group that will use the other, and then you present both, and it's the simplest of the simplest solution because it's just call to action. So something, maybe you could get a result that by the end you're gonna bring and say, this project that cost nothing for you delivered this. Let's grow it up a little bit.
So, but I want to change the focus because if you can do this on your own. So if you go to a CEO and ask him what is his biggest problem about data, he will say activation. He will say getting value out of the data you already have. And with that, I've been cut off. So meet me over a beer if you're interested in continuing this conversation, because shit is over here, folks.